for joining us. Tariq with Common Good Atlanta and Shane with X Books. And we're here talking about the book drive that we're actually going to start doing in October 4th through the 29th, where if you're on Piedmont University, if you're a student, faculty, or staff, you can see any of the boxes around campus and drop a book in there. And those books will go to incarcerated individuals throughout the state of Georgia. Shane at X Books has graciously said that they'll be able to pick them up and use them. And of course, they use them, and the Common Good Atlanta also uses them. So Tariq and Shane are here today with us to actually talk a little bit about Common Good Atlanta and X Books, and then the importance of books within prisons for incarcerated individuals. And then just about 13th a little bit. I mean, some of the topics that came up, not necessarily the film, but just some topics that kind of came up with it. So thank you for joining us. If y'all want to tell us a little bit about yourselves and, you know, who you are, Tariq and Shane.
Okay. Shane, you can go first.
I was going to do that. So, hi, everyone. Thanks for taking the time. It's a pleasure to meet you over Zoom. Yeah, my name's Shane. I am one of the co-founders of X Books. X Books is a new 501c3. So that means we're a new nonprofit that we formed last year with the mission of just getting more books into the hands of folks that are currently incarcerated around the state. And so there's actually about 20 to 25 of these nonprofits that are active around the country, typically kind of operating in at one state focused. We became the first nonprofit kind of licensed to do this kind of work here in Georgia. So it's had its ups and downs. We're learning a ton. It's had its challenges for sure, but we've been able to get, I think, at least like 12,000 books into prisons and different juvenile facilities around the state so far this year. And that's, we just formed, probably 10, 11 months ago. So we are a brand new nonprofit. We're learning a ton and just meeting people right now. And that's why it's nice to be able to do things like this and just get in front of more eyes. So thanks again for coming tonight. And I'm excited to chat a little bit more.
Thank you.
And I'm Tariq Baiyina. I'm on the board with Common Good Atlanta. So Common Good Atlanta is a nonprofit that goes into prisons and brings college courses into prisons. So accredited college courses into prisons. So we're in several prisons across the state of Georgia. And it all started with a woman by the name of Dr. Sarah Higginbotham. Back in 2008, where she just wrote a bunch of wardens around the state asking to be able to come in and teach, literature. She just wanted to be able to do that. She had a connection with one of her family members to this criminal injustice system. So she wanted to give back in a way, and that was her way of giving back, just being able to teach, because that's what she loves to do. And so after many letters and a long wait, somebody finally got back with her, a warden at Phillips State Prison, wrote her back and said, come on in. We'll allow you to do that. So that's where I met her. I was at Phillips State Prison. I did 15 years in Georgia Department of Corrections system. And so while I was there, I met Sarah, and it was kind of unbelievable because at that time the classes weren't accredited, but just to think that, there was somebody in here teaching college level courses was unthinkable to me, because they'd taken college courses out of prison back in the 90s. And so you weren't able to get that anymore. And I had been to several other prisons, and it's just something I had never thought of. So, I've been trying to get some sort of education through correspondence courses and stuff like that. So when I saw a friend of mine, well, I actually just saw the other day, I saw him in the dorm reading Dante, right? And you get people who are kind of scholarly in prison. They read a bunch of different stuff, but not always the classics. So I asked him about it. I said, you know, what you got going on? Why you reading this, you know, Inferno? And he was like, I'm reading it for this college class I'm taking with Georgia State. So I assumed it was a correspondence course. And he's like, no, it's a professor. They come in and actually teach the class. They teach. I was like, what? They know. I don't believe that. He's like, yeah, come on up to the class. You know, it was on Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. It was Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. Come on up to the class and meet Sarah, and yeah, you'll love it, man. Blah, blah, blah. So I didn't believe it till I got there, and I got there and I saw it, and she welcomed me with open arm. At that time, it was pretty easy to get into the class. You didn't have any take any kind of entrance exam or anything like that. But yeah, and so that's how it started. And then, you know, a few years later, we got Georgia State on board and actually began accrediting some courses. And so, you know, we're teaching accredited classes in the prisons now. So, yeah, that's what Common Good does. And so we started, you know, like I said, she teaches literary arts. So we started with her and Bill Taft, who's he's a writing professor. You know, it starts with this whole thing started with books, reading books, analyzing books, discussing books, you know, and and learning, you know, about books and everything you could imagine what could be learned about a book. We pretty much went over it. So yeah, we think books are important at Common Good. So yeah.
Well, I was about to say
that's the long version.
Yeah. One thing that I totally forgot about Sarah is the fact that she started it when she was in grad school. So she was in grad school studying British Renaissance literature. She's a Shakespearean scholar. So she studied Shakespeare, right? And she started this when she was working on her PhD at Georgia State. So she was a student. I mean, I don't know how old she was at the time, but she was a student when she did it. And then, of course, I had to laugh talking about your friend and they're reading Dante. I was like, God. So that's the things that she brought in with them. So like what kind of things did y'all read, Tariq? Like in her class? I know y'all read probably some Shakespeare stuff, and I know some of the things that Bill does, I think, but what are some of the things that you read that really kind of stuck with you, I guess?
I mean, we read everything from like I say, Dante and Shakespeare, to Pedagogy of the Oppressed, Paulo Freire. You know, I mean, it's just a wide range of literature. You know, yeah. So everything from John Lewis's it escapes me right now, but it's like a comic book. Huh?
His speech, March,
yeah. I mean, we touched on so many different topics that it was always interesting.
And you notice what he said, that they read the classics, and Paulo Freire, who was what's the correct word? I mean, he writes about pedagogy and pedagogy of the oppressed, right?
Right.
So the ways that, and I actually haven't read all of it, I can say, but the ways that the oppressed learn, and you know, the ways that education oppresses individuals too, for one, right? So reading that, then reading something like March within Phillips State, right? And now they're in four facilities, right? I went to Whitworth. Whitworth's a women's facility, Phillips State and a couple of others, and then at the reentry program in Atlanta too, correct?
Right. So yeah, and we have this class that on the street too. So yeah. So for people that come out, you know, they're able to continue and continue their education out here, you know, with the class. But we do, you know, particularly Sarah and Bill, they do their best to get people with to be admitted to different colleges and universities, Georgia State, Kennesaw, for full-time be full-time students.
Yeah, they have professors who are from all of those schools that he mentioned.
Yeah, professors
come
from all the schools around here.
So I guess let me I'm trying to think of the question, because I had one for you, Shane. I totally lost it. So what impact have you seen with just books, with getting them into facilities? Because you mentioned that I think y'all started right before COVID really hit. So that's when I first connected with you. And you said y'all have collected, I forgot how many books, and donated how many books, and y'all are the first in Georgia to do this. So what kind of impact have y'all seen?
I think for us, we're still figuring that out. I can't tell you exactly the amount of impact we're having. It's also not going to be something that, I don't think we're ever going to be able to put like a quantitative measure on it. And that's okay. I know the reason that XBooks started is there was an article in the AJC back in May of 19 about the shortage of books in prisons, and talking about how there are multiple prisons around the state that have like one book per prisoner, one book per person that's incarcerated, or 1 to 3 books. And so there was an opportunity for an organization to kind of work against that and to increase those numbers around the state. And so that's really kind of the impact that we're striving to have, doing it in a variety of ways. One of the ways is kind of working through the Department of Corrections, but then also by partnering with organizations like Common Good and reaching out to people like, Dr. Higginbotham, and just saying, hey, what books do you need? Let us kind of buy them for you, or get a donation, or worked with one of our bookstores that we worked with to fill those needs. We've also been, one thing that's been pretty cool is working with juvenile facilities around Atlanta so far, but working to kind of push that around the state a little bit. And those have been a little easier to see the impact because there's a little less red tape. And so we've been able to provide books for book clubs for different juvenile facilities around the city. So that's one thing that's been really cool. And talk about impact. We heard from the woman, her name is Bianca Wright, that runs one of these educational programs at the Metro Atlanta facility. And to hear her call me and talk about the impact of the books and the impact of the book club. We're just providing books. She's doing all the hard stuff. But it's really rewarding to be able to, do our part and do the little bit of work to get her the books that she wants and might not have been able to get before. So that's the impact that I think we're having now and are only going to continue to increase and look forward to.
Well, I think that's an important thing that you mentioned that I didn't even think about, is we could get books for K. Well, what age group would that probably be for the juvenile facilities?
So it starts as young as 9.
Okay.
So it'd be 9 up to 18 is the ages of the children that she's working with and that are in these types of facilities around the state.
Okay. So we could focus and get people to bring in kids' books. All right. And like Tariq said, they read March. That's a graphic novel about John Lewis and the Civil Rights Movement that I'm teaching next semester in my class, my multicultural American lit class for educators, but that is used in middle schools and high schools as well, right? And talking about all this. And one thing that maybe our listeners who are watching this afterwards, and you in this class, you in this room, some of you may know, is the fact that Georgia has the largest number of, I'm probably gonna use the wrong term, incarcerated individuals, or individuals still under incarceration, basically, after their release, right? I think in the world, is that right? Definitely within the US.
You mean under community supervision? Yeah,
right.
basically.
That's the term I'm looking for. Yeah, under community supervision. Thank you. I was trying to think of the correct term. So which would be probation, right?
Probation or parole, yeah.
Right. So if you look at a graph like that whole thing, and kind of you know, how do we think about that? Because one of the things in 13th that I don't know if y'all seen that, but the key argument, of course, within 13th is that it's tracing mass incarceration through history and back to slavery. And Angela Davis says that historically, when one looks at efforts to create reforms, they inevitably lead to more repression. And we see that, I'm even thinking about now with voting rights acts, right? Especially if we have a huge amount of individuals on probation. So, I mean, I don't really have a question there. I just kind of, I guess, what are your thoughts or ways to even, you know, move forward with it? Because that's huge. I know. I'm sorry.
I mean, there's nothing left except to keep fighting. You know, that's the only answer. Here in America, if you're going to live in this system, unfortunately, you're going to have to fight the system and make it live up to its, you know, its greatest ideals. And, you know, the history of Black people in America is really a legacy of just that. The legacy of Black people in America is forcing America to live up to its highest standards and ideals. That's what it is. All the way throughout, you know, from slavery till now, that has been our role in this country. And we've let it out of necessity, you know. and the only answer is just to continue. Unfortunately, you have at every turn those in power that want to stay in power, and they feel like to give any of it away, you know, particularly the Black people, is a problem. Like it's an unthinkable idea, because they think Black people want to, you know, take some sort of if we get power, you know, too much power, then we'll take revenge or something like that. But you know, this is what they don't realize is that Black people in America actually love America. If we didn't, we would have left a long time ago. First chance we got, we would have got out of here, you know. And we see the potential here in America and what America could be. So we do our best to force it into that direction. But yeah, that's what they think. And just the you know, Thucydides said a long time ago, you know, Thucydides, he said a long time ago, what did he say? They that have the odds of power exact as much as they can, and the weak yield to such as they can get. He said something along those lines. And so, you know, people in power, they want more power. They don't want to give it up. That's what it is at all. But Black people in America are weak. And so we haven't yielded to what just we can get. And a lot of times people look at it and say, oh, they always asking for something. They always crying about this or crying about that and this and that. But we're forcing America to look at itself and its own, and we're the mirror. Look at yourself and your hypocrisies, right? And as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has and it never will. It never has and it never will, right? And so you have to make the demand. Otherwise, you'll be that weak one just fighting for whatever you can get, scraps off of the table.
And that brings up two things. That one thing, we're going to watch Dolores for our October film, which is about Dolores Huerta, who was part of the United Farm Workers Union with Cesar Chavez. And one of the comments that somebody says there is he's I think it's Larissa Alvarez. He's an author. He says that racism is endemic to America. And he talks about slavery. He talks about African Americans and the Black diaspora, but he also talks about Filipinos. He talks about Chinese migrant workers. He talks about Latino workers, right? So I like that comment that you point out, that, you know, holding up a mirror to oneself. That's what Frederick Douglass does, right?
Right.
Which I love. And you mentioned that the way to beat it is to fight. And that's kind of my question too, because like I said, thinking about the ways I've thought about working with organizations like Common Good, or even when I was in Auburn, Kai Stevens, I don't know if you know her, but she does work in Alabama, right? I think her and Sarah connected a little bit, but was working then, but didn't have the time. So even being able to do something like this is some way to do something, right? Even if you can't change what's going on, it's some way to actually provide some kind of fight to a certain extent.
Right. I mean, and you even if you don't lead the charge, there are plenty of causes out here that you can become a part of and lend yourself to. You know, I was privileged enough when I got out to get to not only stay in touch with Common Good and to be able to continue working with Common Good, but also to become a community organizer with an organization called IMAN, Inner City Muslim Action Network. And in that capacity, I was able to start a campaign which is called No Taxation Without Representation. And the whole crux of this campaign is just to bring voting rights back to people who have gotten out of prison but are still on parole and probation, because these people still out here paying taxes. I'm still being taxed. I'm on paper right now, but I'm still being taxed every time I turn around. Sales tax, property tax, and whatever other high tax you can think about. So, you know, but I don't have the right to vote because I'm on parole. You know, I'm on parole.
And the other thing I found out too that I didn't know. So I don't know if y'all seen that the Department of Justice is doing an investigation into Georgia's prisons.
Yeah, now.
Yeah, and part of that stems from, you do know that there was a prison here in Habersham, right? The Arundel Women's Prison. So a few months ago, there was a letter, and correct me on the organization, but it's the Southern Organization of Civil Rights out of Atlanta.
Southern Center for Human Rights.
Thank you. Southern Center for Human Rights wrote a letter to Lee Arundel about the treatment of the women, specifically post-birth, so postpartum, lack of mental care, all this type of stuff, right? But this is occurring elsewhere too. And the thing that I found out, that Paige Dukes, I don't know if y'all know her, but she was actually a student here too, whole nother story, but found out that, which I should have known, I'm learning as I go along, that those women who are incarcerated there count in the census towards electoral votes and all that stuff within where they are. So wherever the person's incarcerated, when the census comes around, they're counting towards, you know, districting and votes, even though they can't vote.
Paige probably got that from me. She probably heard me say it somewhere. Yeah, but yeah, it's true. It's true. I mean, to be honest, I'm so liberal. I think people should be able to vote in prison. You know what I mean? Because I haven't lost my citizenship just because I got locked up. And, you know, there's a couple states that allow for it, you know, Maine and Vermont. But by and large, people aren't able to vote in prison. But at the same time, like you said, everybody that is in every bed in any county in the United States is getting counted for the census. Right. They actually have certain counts that they call census counts in prison. Right. But yeah, they get counted for the census, and these counties get funding for that. But these people have absolutely no representation whatsoever. Right. So it's a one-sided street all the way around. And when you take away particularly somebody's voting rights, I'm just talking about you know, that's not the only thing. When you take away a person's voting right and you disenfranchise them, then, you know, you take away a piece of them that may want to be a good citizen. But I can't even, you know, I can't be involved. You know what I'm saying? There's no way for me to get involved in the actual nuts and bolts of society, you know, because I'm blocked out. And so what kind of incentive do I have to be a good citizen when you really you know, you blocking me away from that, from the privileges or the rights of being a good citizen?
And that's essentially, remember, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments of the Constitution ended slavery, gave citizenship, and gave voting rights, right? And then, of course, Reconstruction and the backlash to Reconstruction led to voter suppression and then to the Voting Rights Act of 65. Have y'all read the 13th Amendment? If y'all watched 13, you did. Have y'all read it?
Yeah, I read it.
So I'm going to read it to you real quick for y'all in here. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude. This is the one that abolishes slavery. Here's the important clause. Except as a punishment for crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted. So imprisoned. That's where the bond lease system comes from and where we get mass incarceration now. Shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. And that's in the Constitution, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so it opens the door to the things that, like, immediately after the war for, convict leasing, locking people up and leasing them out.
And really not the New Jim Crow, that's Alexander. Slavery by Another Name's a history book for that. But my introduction to that is through Ernest Gaines and a couple of his novels in Louisiana. So Of Love and Dust is a really good novel that kind of deals with that and deals with the interracial romance. But
I've never read it.
Yeah, that's his best novel. If you want to read that, let me know and we can talk about that. Because have you ever read Ernest Gaines?
I haven't. No.
All right, yeah. Go read him. He writes about Louisiana, and I'm from Louisiana, so that's partly why, of course, I'm fond of him. But what do you have to say, Shane? I mean, what about all of that, Shane? You want to add anything?
So I think the point that Tariq made about keep fighting. I think for me, coming from like a very privileged space, is what little impact can I do? What is there something to do? And this is kind of how Xbook started. And we had, this was before I met Tyrell, who's the other co-founder, but I'd read that article back in the AJC in June of 19. And you read, y'all know how it is. You read an article and you get really excited and you want to do something to help. And that feels really good, that desire to do something. But that's all it is at that point. Like, it's just a desire to do something. And I was talking about it and it stayed with me and the article stayed with me. And I didn't do anything for 6 months. And I got to January and I remember telling my then girlfriend, now fiance, I just said, like, I either need to stop talking about this or do something. Like, I can't, this like middle ground is serving nobody. And had lunch with a friend and he just said, like, is there anything that I can help with? And this is what I wanted to do. And we did a book drive in February, right before COVID, sat outside and 40-degree weather and collected. My goal was 500 to 1,000 books. We collected 3,000 books. And then they were supposed to be picked up like third week of February. It was pouring rain the morning that the guy from the Department of Corrections was supposed to come get them. And then COVID hit and they sat in my little 1-bedroom apartment. And so just needed to figure out a way to do something. And as luck had it, I found Tyrell and Tyrell found me. And that's how Xbooks kind of came out of this idea of just wanting to do something and not just going along with the idea or not just thinking about ways to help, but actually doing something. And it's, we're still learning a ton about what it means to run a nonprofit, but we at least get to make an impact. And at the end of the day, like, yes, we're having an impact in getting books into prisons and, helping kind of bump that number up of the shortage of books. But the more important thing is getting calls from people like Bianca saying how a 12-year-old is reacting to the book that she just read in book club. Like, that means more than anything. And so, I mean, to his point where, he talked about keep fighting it, for me, I just like find a way to do something, as he also said. And this was a way for us to do that. And we started a nonprofit because there is such a need for this. And so we're lucky enough to be able to help with that. But it was something that really stuck with me, and I got tired of just talking about it, and that helped nobody. And so, for us, it was just finding a way to be helpful.
Yeah, and there's nothing I can add to any of that. I do have more questions, but I don't want to sit here and ask them since we don't want to stay too long. So I'm gonna see if anybody that was in here eating or who has done eating would have any questions or anything, or if they want to ask or say anything. And I'll repeat if they say, "Is this mic on, Zach?" No. All right, I can turn it on. I'll pass them a mic if they have anything. I got it. Wait.
Does it go?
There it goes. Zach will be our mic person. Do y'all have any questions or anything y'all want to say? So I mean, one thing that I've done here is two of the student organizations. I mean, I reached out to them and they've got involved and jumped head in with it, which I'm really excited about, that they're actually doing something, for this and getting students involved with it. So I applaud them and I'm thankful for them actually doing that and helping out with all of this. I know somebody's got a question. Nobody's got a question. What's your question? What? All right. It was my son, sorry. He's here because my wife's not here. So let me just ask this question and leave it here. So I know I asked you what your favorite thing was that you read, or what's the thing you remember that you read. Both of y'all, and I guess even me, like I said, Of Love and Dust is probably my favorite novel for various reasons. Maybe not my favorite thing ever written, but just one of my favorite novels. What's one piece of writing or one text that sticks with you that you would want students to read, that's impacted you and had an impact on you? And y'all mentioned a few as you've gone, I know.
Sorry, go ahead.
I've been doing a lot of talking.
No. Go for it.
Two of my favorite books are Autobiography of Malcolm X and Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass. Those two are my favorites. So they're really biographies, they're not really novels. Yeah.
I still need to read the Autobiography of Malcolm X, but the Narrative of Frederick Douglass, yeah, definitely. And I need to read his other ones too. One thing from Malcolm X that stands out is the Ballad of the Bullet, of course. If y'all haven't read that, I would always suggest reading it. Yeah, Michael. Yeah, we have a question real quick.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Hello. I'm the SG president, and I was just wondering what type of books are you really looking for the prisoners to be able to find interested as well as to be able to educate? Because I know that reading is power and power is knowledge. That I know that it's very essential that they have more of a books of education or even more in depth into the system.
So what kind of books would be most impactful, do you think, or what kind of books are you? I know that y'all collect any book, Shane. I know that, but are there any kind of specific books or any kind of groups of books that they may use in common good, Tariq, or maybe a question for Sarah and everybody too?
Yeah, I mean that'd be a great question for Sarah. I mean, and some whatever the course material is that they're using. But I mean, just in general, anything you think is interesting, right? So, like I said, I spent 15 years in prison. I read a range of everything, everything. Books on sociology, realism, whatever I can get my hand on to make me, just to quench my thirst for knowledge and curiosity. And so I don't think that there's any kind of limit, on what you can donate. I think you can. What was that? It was a book. What was the name of that book? Who Moved My Cheese or something like that. even that, you know what I'm saying?
Wait,
So,
what,
I mean,
what was that?
it's called, it was a book, I think it was called Who Moved My Cheese or something like that. It was a
Is
good
that,
book.
is that like
Short
Everybody Poops?
I've never read that one.
I think my son's read that one.
Short novel.
To
But,
that point, though, I think, and that's one thing that we've talked about is, you think about like all these self-help books or how to code or things like that. We at no point want to be the arbiters of what people read. And so exactly as Tariq was saying is whatever's interesting. We've collected and sent all different kinds of books, everything from self-help to art books to books on meditation to sci-fi to comic books, things like that. Like it's literally anything. And so we never want to tell people like, hey, here are these 10 books that we got. Like, what do you want? More so just saying, hey, what do you want to read? And we'll get it for you. So I think we're on the same page there.
Yeah. I mean, people read all kinds of stuff. Like you said, sci-fi, whatever you're into, you should donate it. Because it's somebody on the inside, it's probably a bunch of people on the inside that's into the same thing. And if they don't know they're into it, they may know that they may find out once they read the book. So, yeah.
Any other questions right now? All right, we got to end with Shane and what books had the most impact on him or books.
Yes, so I'd say the first one is Our Prison's Obsolete by Angela Davis. That was a very eye-opening book and just reframing how you think about the prison system. And it's also does a really good job of very concisely kind of leading you up to where the issue started a long time ago, but how it started getting a lot worse in the 70s, which I know the documentary touched on. So that was one for sure. I'm looking at my bookshelf now. Just Mercy from Brian Stevenson is one that goes kind of way back for me. That was a very, again, I'm coming from a very privileged space, and so to have these books kind of serve as books that opened my eyes to not just like the injustice, of course, but to the system. And also that book was amazing because it was a gentleman that decided to do something to help. And he's come a long way from being a lawyer starting out in Atlanta. And so to read his story and to read what he's done, to go to his museum, to the EJI museum was really cool. And so, I would encourage that. And we've actually also been, they've sent us some of their books to donate. They actually have the publishing company now. And I'll say the last one is a book called The Sun Does Shine. It's about it's about a gentleman who was on death row for 30 years for a crime he did not commit. And he actually started a book club for people on death row. And so to read that story, to read about how he spoke, I think his name is Anthony Ray Hinton, to hear about how he spoke about the importance of books, only reinforced what we're wanting to do with that book. So, for me, I'm constantly trying to read more. And one of the things I'm trying to read more now is just about like the history of books in prisons and what some of the issues are that I've come across and how other organizations have done this kind of work. So I would say those three: Just Mercy, The Sun Does Shine, and Our Prison's Obsolete.
All right, thanks. Do we have
John Grisham?
What'd you say?
Anything John Grisham.
I didn't realize I looked him up the other day for something. He was actually in the Mississippi State House of Rep. Either that or the Senate, but he was actually a politician.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I mean, I don't read him, but I was like, wow. Do y'all have any more questions before we head out? All right, I think they're good. Thank you all very much for joining us. I'm gonna email y'all a couple of things. There's a couple of questions I had about some people y'all mentioned, especially with the juvenile facilities and things like that. But thank you for all the work that you're doing. Thank you for spending time with us, and we'll catch up when COVID's over. Maybe go to the EJI because I want to take students there because I've been there and very powerful. But thank you, and I hope you'll have a good night.
All right.
Thanks.